another car video today. It's a little windy out again here on the high desert plains of Salt Lake City. This is probably going to be the last video that I do from Salt Lake City, so we'll be relocating to a different area and we'll do some more outdoor, walkabout videos when we get to the new location. But I hear it's windy there too, so we'll see. Yeah, it's just been sometimes like, sorry, I had to get a little liquid in there. Sometimes when I've been going to do videos recently, I just get interrupted, or like last week I literally was interrupted during setting up. I had to suddenly drop everything and go back home. And that's okay, no big deal. But so I wanted to do a few more videos recently talking about things, and today I was set up with some time to do so and run into a hurdle. So I said, hey, it's time to do another car video then. And that way there's not a lot of wind in the background and other things that are distracting. So during this whole move, it's just got me thinking a lot about, adversity and strengthening, and how we become stronger generally is through, tough times. And so if you look at even, what's happening to a lot of people on the planet right now, there's a lot of challenging things that are occurring to people, and it's creating a situation where they're having to step up to the plate in a lot of different ways. It looks like the lighting is getting, the phone does not know which light to focus on. That's okay. So that's like not just the way that like humanity works, but the way that nature seems to be functioning is this sort of testing ground facility where we're being faced with something almost like out of our own creation to come back and challenge us in our methods, and also challenge us in our will, to continue on in certain directions. And a lot of what's false falls away, and a lot of what people thought was true becomes abundantly clear that it's not the case anymore, or something becomes so false that now it becomes more of a common sense thing that people know that it's not the case anymore. So basically, like, the axe doesn't become sharp without grinding against the stone, or your mind doesn't become, doesn't expand, doesn't continue to grow unless you yourself are challenged continuously. And so a lot of people are going to just kind of go the opposite direction, I guess, and fall into further disconnect from reality and the way things could be, or the truth, or even just things that matter, or their own health, and fall into worse conditions than they were before because of all this. And not just all this, like just the coronavirus, but everything in the world that's happening right now. The battle for information, the battle for censorship, the battle for your life, the battle for food, the battle for income in order to be able to provide for your family, for yourself, real things like that. But then also, ever expanding things like, how larger scale economic systems could or should function. These are all being challenged right now. And through that challenge, a lot of people are stepping up to the plate and taking on these challenges and addressing the issues that come up through challenges like this, and are really, being driven to expand throughout this, challenging time. And so with that, I've just been reflecting a lot on, my own situation and, the challenges that are coming up in front of us right now and how it's causing our family to step up to the plate and really, kind of drive through situations that, yeah, we're creating a lot of the change that is coming up, but it's necessary. It's necessary change that we have to kind of push ourselves forward. And what we call in autonomy is trigger complexity, or what you would just say like making things difficult in order to create that expansion, after the recovery period. It's similar to tearing down a muscle or working out or lifting weights. You have to tear down through damaging basically the muscles, or, using them in a way that does not damage them in a way that's like negative or something, but that's how growth occurs, is through that, tearing down. And so we're seeing the effect of that on a large scale right now, is that, what we call bubbles economically, or what are like falsity bubbles, things that build up that aren't true in reality. And a lot of what happens with corporations and economies and the way that the legal structure is set up is that it's not, in alignment with reality. It's not even close to, the forces that we're working with. And so those forces are omnipresent and omnipotent, they're not immutable forces that can't be changed, no matter what man says is true or tries to do in one direction or the other. Natural law wins out, and we become subject to natural law. We become subject to the causality, of what we're creating. And when we do that, negative consequences ensue sometimes when we're incorrect in our alignment with our behaviors, with what is real, but at the same time, it's like a game, because like we're doing it to ourselves in a way in order to create that complexity, in order to grow. And so, evil itself is sort of like that, naughty child that's always like kind of trying to do the wrong thing. And then there's that other side that learns from all the mistakes that are happening, right? And I'm not justifying evil things that are happening or saying that it's good if A, B, C, D happens. And, like if there's certain situations where human suffering is occurring that's unnecessary, I'm not like that's absolutely necessary in order for us to exist. That's not the case. Like there's human suffering that's necessary for growth. And then there's unnecessary human suffering that occurs, and not just human suffering, but unnecessary suffering of living beings in general. That's, again, not necessary. It's not required for the conditions of growth and prosperity and that whole thing where, yeah, maybe there's an ebb and a flow between the negative things that have to occur to a person in order for them to see the positive, or in order to know what they need to do to grow into the positive. But then again, there's levels of that where we don't need the whiplash effect like we're seeing now, where there's obviously an unnecessary amount of suffering occurring on the planet that is definitely our doing. It isn't just a natural phenomena thing happening. Like there's so much of our ignorance and apathy towards what is and what people are capable of, or what is actually occurring up to this point, or things that have occurred in recent history. There's so much ignorance towards that when things are going down on the scale that they are now, there's a lot of straight up, malevolent or just predatory type actors that step in and take advantage of that complete ignorance of the masses. And so, again, that isn't necessary. We don't need that in order to develop and grow. We can go ahead and even trigger this complexity in ourselves throughout our own life. Again, going back to like what we're going through as a family, as a small unit on this like microcosm level, is we could have stayed where we were. We didn't have to leave at the moment that we are. And we could have just kind of coasted in the position that we're in now, and maybe not taken as much risk as we're about to take now by, kind of leaving the network that we're in now and, leaving some of the tethers that are set up and some of the, homeschooling networks that we've set up, as we are homeschoolers, and the familial aspect to that, and having that support network, that's all very good things, that are great. But if you kind of separate from that and create a situation where now you have to become more responsible for aspects, or maybe network better with new people, not just take everything on yourself, but now maybe you're going to have to ask for more help from other people. Maybe you're going to have to actually become more engaged with a community than you were before, because you're, deep down know that you don't have that network anymore. Or strengthen networks longer distance and things like that. Nowadays with technology, with travel, seemingly, there's a side that's definitely trying to restrict travel and things right now, and the current conditions of the world could, change, and things could go back to a somewhat more normal state of travel. I mean, we're going to be traveling across the West and not having, I don't think we'll encounter any restrictions or any issues in our travels throughout this process. I have taken some contingencies in place and done some research on that just in case. But most likely the next time you see me, I'll be, in another climate and talking about the same kind of stuff. What I have planned is to start I've already started this. We're already well underway with a media production company that not only, basically we're going to generate revenue initially to fund the operation through assisting with media production on the side. This is all in addition to what I sort of do for a living, or what, my main source of income is network security, and that will probably continue for some time. But this whole new thing is using these technological aptitudes that I have, and in order to launch a production company that can help spread information when it's important to do so, that I can participate in, help other people produce their ideas, and then also behind that start to record and get all the instructions down on how we're doing what we're doing, so that we're not just like hoarding and trying to get clients in so that we can do all the magical work behind the scenes, but actually teach clients who really want to know the tools and what we're doing, how we do it behind the scenes. So it's going to be an adventure. I'm not like 100% set up and ready and I know everything that I need to know to do that, but we're going to learn, and it's going to be something that you'll see develop over the years. It'll be, different platforms and mixed in with what I do here on TylerBloyer.com. On TylerBloyer.com, we try to talk about things that have to do with truth, freedom, prosperity. But really, it's just the whole reason I created my own platform for me is just to be able to express any idea that I'd want to at the time in my life that I want to do that, and not really have any agenda or purpose in doing that. Not necessarily even like a libertarian or like, like truther aspect to things, but to be able to go in and actually, just have an honest way to have an honest place, a real place where I can just express myself and grow it over time, to show, how I'm developing my thoughts and ideas. It's not like, even to like try to change the world or anything. Like, my expectations are high for my goals and the things that I want to do in this life. But I also know that it's like a marathon, and it's not like everything's going to happen right away. And some of the thoughts and ideas that I have that I want to express too aren't necessarily all formulated. And so that, at times, like with the falling into the movement traps, that was like quite a few years of developing thoughts and ideas to be able to put them into those 4 episodes that we did. And back then I had thought that I would have a lot more in me to be able to do continuous on that series and keep going with it, but now it seems like we're going to have to circle back to that, as life just sort of happens, and other things start to take over, other things start to become more upfront in your face. And so for me, recently, it's the easier way to do my thoughts and ideas out and get them out is just, on a cell phone with a selfie stick on a Sunday morning when I have time and a gap to do so. And it still feels like it's a pressuring on my schedule to do it. And the last few weeks have proven that. But my attitude towards that hasn't been the same as it might have been in the past. And that's another thing that we learn as adversity comes in, and as, human beings deal with more and more pressure. At first, it's overwhelming. And at first, those first few times that you kind of go through your rite of passage into the next level of consciousness of your surroundings and responsibility, but growth and, just sort of that expansion of your ability as well. But not only that, but like a humblingness that comes along with all that, to realize how precious it all is, and the bigger picture and things, and your role in that, and how, at sometimes it just seems like it's all just waves crashing on a distant shore in the end. But then other times that everything that you do matters, and every time that you fall out of integrity, how important that is to your future, and to the future of your children, and to the future of your family, and your possibility and their potential. So during these times, it's really important to try to, lighten up and not allow all the pressure and adversity and, chaos and things happening in the world to overwhelm you to the point where you're stagnant, or becoming a victim of the situation, or allowing, like we were talking about, the predatory side of this whole thing, where the predators, decide that this is their opportune time to take advantage in whatever form that is, whether it's Bill Gates and his vaccination programs, which is like a really big highlight in this whole thing, is he's coming into focus as his whole agenda of depopulation and eugenics is definitely more apparent. Yes, people are also in such a slumber, in such sleep, that they don't see it at all. And there's that side, but then there's the other side of it that totally sees exactly what's happening and starting to wake up to it and all. And this is the first time they're realizing that a tech geek is in somehow linked to health, which is in somehow linked to profits, which is then somehow, linked to maybe even a further higher agenda for those that are willing to accept that there's other agendas operating in the world that they may not be fully on board with, but that are underway. Like Planned Parenthood, and the abortions that occur under that facility is all an extension of the same type of thought that Bill Gates is operating under, which is a social Darwinistic philosophy of, superiority in classes, basically, and a slave class of people that needs to be, controlled and herded and completely formed into what the technocrats see as their new world order puppets. Their slave class of people who will continue to, make the wheels turn and make this whole thing keep going, while they, hide out behind the moon on their spaceship rockets, ready to take off to other galaxies, drinking babies' blood and, keeping their shit fresh, while we all suffer here being sprayed by whatever being sprayed by, and controlled with whatever frequencies they've unleashed on us at that point. And, my opinion really, is that the vaccinations are just like a ploy for those who understand what it really is all about, control and domination from a class of people here. The vaccinations are kind of like this lower level understanding of really the whole thing, because it is a brooch on your body, on your, area, on your property. It's a word I was trying not to use, but that is, like evil showing you that it is in control. But it's already in control. That's just sort of a sick form of you consenting and accepting it, And it's like Cuomo, we'll find his clip if we can, of him saying it's all voluntary.
Everything we're doing is basically voluntary on behalf of people, right? state government, local government, federal government doesn't have the power to enforce stay-at-home orders. If 19 million people said, I'm going out today, they would go out.
The whole thing's all voluntary. Everything the state does and that the government does and the federal government does and that the people go along with is all voluntary. And I love that because the voluntarists would lose their shit over that. But he's right. Like, that's what I've been saying. It is. Everything's voluntary. You always have a choice in the matter. And also, voluntarism or a voluntary contract doesn't work, that you sign up for the details of the contract and then later get to decide. And so, again, there's a contradiction for libertarian voluntarists there to say that what's occurring is potentially not voluntary. It all is, because you have to be involved in the system itself to become subject to its domination. And so if you were truly of your own free will and an anarchist, and you didn't have any masters, then none of this would affect you anyway. And that's like kind of like what Cuomo's saying. And that's what the whole render unto Caesar, what's owed to Caesar thing is like. If you, through your ignorance and apathy, and through your parents and their parents, and through this lineal familial thing where it's a generational thing of ignorance that's brought you to the conditions that you're in, of being to the point where people writing things down on paper are going to be able to put things into your body, and they're slaves with arms and things like that are going to come and enforce that on you if that's the big threat. The only reason you're subject to any of that, and that's how it's going to unfold, and you'll see, is through your contractual relationships, like putting your kids into a public school, like working for a corporation that would enforce this sort of things, like being reliant on script that is tied to legalese, that is tied to all these things, so that you're the one who's voluntarily subjecting yourself to all these things, voluntarily. So it is voluntary. And I don't mean to go into all that again. It's just that I know that it's a fresh topic for particular people that might be floating around and watching my videos. So, but then I still see them, touting the same rhetoric and seemingly not able to get over that. And that's okay. It's not a problem. I mean, I'm not upset about it. My goal isn't necessarily to try and go and change anyone's mind about anything. But going back to, what we were talking about is that, this whole thing that's happening might have been somewhat necessary. The whole C19 issue. It might have been somewhat necessary, not justifying it, but in the sense that, like, maybe like an asteroid hits the planet or something, right? Is that when we're challenged, that's when we also step up to the plate. And otherwise, if we're just staying sort of like how things were, and it's average, and it's not getting any harder, and it's not going to that will not challenge us enough to change the way that we need to change on this planet right now. The way that humanity as a whole needs to, wake up out of their sleep and start actually addressing the issues from a causal perspective, and not just these, mind-controlled, parroted responses that people are under from the media and through their own ignorance and through, the control that they subject themselves to. It's not a top. Notice how I try to phrase things differently than it's just always this, they are doing these things to us. We are creating these conditions as a whole that come back on us in every way, that is reflected back on how things come in the way that they come, the forms of control that come in, or whatever it is, or the degradation, or the suffering, or the inhumanity, or the treatment of animals. All that stuff comes from us. It's not, and it's you, and so it's me, and it's all of us. We're all responsible on a certain level, and can take a certain amount of responsibility for the things that are happening to change it, right? So I don't say like everything that's happening to us is because they're doing it and these things like that. Like, this whole thing, that's what this video is sort of trying to unfold, is that We create the conditions so that we can learn the most. And that's what I think this whole human experience is really all about, is the universe trying to understand more about itself through each one of us, through nature, through the planets, through the whole thing, is basically a system of self-knowledge in the oneness, or the all. We're not all the same. We're not all just like the same blob of, you don't really own anything in your body and you should just, that's not like the collective Borg. Like, we do have sovereignty as, what I would say, like, permutations or representations of the whole of God. We're like microcosm in the macrocosm beings while we're here. And that's the idea, is so when things are going down the way that they are, it's not, I think it's helpful to see that it could all just be, it is all for your personal development and growth for each one of us. And so recognizing that is your time to step up. That is your time to expand. That is your time to cut out the things in your own life that need to be cut out, and not wait for big systems and big governments and big things to come and fix the problems in your life and send you checks and tell you what's going to open and what's not going to open. Like, now you need to be answering those questions. Where is your next check coming from? How are you going to reopen? How is your economy reopening now? It shouldn't have closed in the first place. We should have been prepared well in advance for any kind of stuff where people are saying you can't do this, and so we're going to cut you off here. Like, all the contingencies now need to be put in place to where your economy can thrive through any of these things that happen, right? And so, again, stepping up to that plate is what we're being asked to do right now. And some people can't manage that, and some people are just trying to help other people, and some people are lost and confused about anything that's happening right now on the planet, But we'll get through it, and we'll make it out on the other side. And on that other side, we're going to have to, basically rebuild our mind, rebuild the shattered framework again. And those that are already well on the way to picking up those pieces are going to come out on top on the other side. And I'm not talking about like in a hierarchical power structure, come out on top way. I mean, like, come out on top, like your family's going to survive through this, and you're going to make it, and you're not going to keep continuing to wallow and be hammered down by this. All right. So with that being said, TylerBloyer.com, sign up for the subscription. That's how you'll keep up to updates with anything I've been talking about with Within the Stones. Or Within the Stones is, by the way, the media production company that we were talking about. So if you're interested in developments with me and the move and the family, that's how you can keep up with that as well. The Discord is sort of picking up. That's more for live streaming, but if you want to drop a question in there, that's another good way to get a hold of me. I've been having people reach out, and I've been seeing some activity from the videos on things that I've been mentioning. We won't get into all the analytics of that, but I would urge people to continue to do so. Things are a little bit crazy for me right now. I'm, again, moving, and going to be setting up this new business on the side of what I regularly do, and on top of my main focus, which is my family, which is, where all of my energy goes, is to improve our conditions and make our situation better. So, yeah, in addition to all that, we all need to step up, and this is what these times are asking us to do. And in challenging times is when you also see heroic figures come to the fore. And it is, biblical and mythological. It's prophecy. And the reason for that is because these truths that I'm mentioning today about, like, the natural law consequences of our behavior, and then how responsibility actually creates more freedom and pockets of freedom moving forward, isn't something that, like, it's coming from me, right? These are like teachings that I'm incorporating, into my own views, But I would look at this as more like a principle of understanding, and that's like where prophecy and mythology predicting the future comes into play, because they are, recognizing these crunch times as they come in is when you see an actual, like Jesus type figure, which I think again is a beautiful story. But we would differ if someone would try to interpret everything literally versus what I'm seeing is actually personified allegorization of natural law, and how it functions. And that's sort of what today's video was about, and a little bit all over the place too. But it's about that time. I got to get back. We'll throw this up and get back at it, and we'll see you guys on the other side.